Welcome to a special edition of Crawford County Outdoors. I'm Duane and we are here at the Holeshot Raceway here outside of Linesville today. We're going to learn about the Hare scramble, we're going to learn about motocross racing, and we're going to talk to some of the organizers and some of the folks who put all this together. So really looking forward to it, so stay tuned. We've got a good show for you today. Joining us now, Art Servey, the owner here at the Holeshot Raceway. Art, talk about the place here. Give us a little history lesson, maybe.
Well, it does go back quite a ways. Originally, this piece of property was used back in 1975. I had just graduated high school in '74. Fortunately, I'm giving away my age. But we started out with myself and the neighbor kid who still has the farm up there. His dad was running it at the time. We decided we wanted to build a motocross track. Only back then it was three-wheelers and six-wheelers, if you know the ATVs, the Addixes and so forth. And long story short, we got the property, we started a racetrack. A local guy up in Ashtabula dropped off a bulldozer. He said he was going to build it for us, but his idea of building it was he dropped it off and he pointed out a couple levers to us, 55-gallon drum of fuel, and away we went. Of course, I remember seeing the look on Glenn's dad's face every time we'd take that 55-gallon drum up of fuel up the farm and refill it, you know. So anyhow, we pushed together a racetrack, and we had great dreams to have a race facility. And after the first year, I think we went broke and we went our separate ways. I went my way and Glenn went his. And then we come back again in, I want to say 1989, I think was the start of it. Yeah, 1989. We started here in October. I'd come back. I'd been on the road building nightclubs, and I owned a club down in Ocean City, Maryland. And we come up here, and this piece of property was here still. And I saw a bunch of kids riding bikes on it, you know, and I went up to the local bike shop up in Erie at the time, which was Cycle City. And I asked them about a motocross track, and we stopped at the guys here at Street Track and Trail. Dick Lupley, he come over and helped announce, and a bunch of local kids, Mike D, I'm calling him a kid, that back then he was, you know, in his 20s. And they all helped me put it together, and we had our opening race, I believe, I want to say October 31st, because Saturday night all the girls were waiting in the clubs for the guys to come be with them, and they're out here helping me put out banners and stuff, you know. So that was the start of it. We ran 4 weekends, 4 Sundays with a rubber band start. The finish line was a couple bales of hay and
a rubber band. You mean something traced across? When it got out of the way, then you took off, right?
Latex surgical cord. You know, the surgical tubing. Yeah, you'd stretch that out. And
then you take off.
You pulled a pin, and the two bands went to either side. You know, we had washers on them. They'd hit that plywood and crack. Nobody thought about jumping the line, thinking they were going to hit that. So that was the start, 1989. This was just a flat field. This was a cornfield, nothing here. And then that was '89, and it went pretty good. I think we started out maybe our first race with 150 riders, which back then was pretty good. A lot of three-wheelers in it. We have old tapes. If I can still dig some of the old tapes up, we have old tapes showing the old days of just class after class of three-wheelers. It was crazy. So then time went by. 1991, we were one of the first ones to do night racing. And we kind of got that idea. I went up to Jefferson County Fairgrounds. I saw them racing at night. I said, well, this is kind of neat. We can do that, you know. So we started putting up lights, and it slowly progressed. Every year it grew, it grew, it grew. I want to say 2003 was probably the peak. We're a member of the CRA organization, Competition Riders of America. That's a group of promoters like myself that got together, formed an association, so all the riders garner points from each race. Those points add up. We have a big banquet. We put on a $100,000 banquet in January, big awards banquet. It's been attended by as many as 1,500 people. We're down a little bit now to half of that, just to kind of show you what's happened to the sport over the years. And I would say 2003 was probably the peak. You know, it's gone up and down a little bit. It seems to be coming back some more now. A lot more tracks in the area. A lot of people have gone to practicing only. But two of the biggest things that affected the sport, in my opinion, are our local economy and the type of people we have left living in the area. At one time, this was a huge blue-collar area. Same thing that happened to Conneaut Lake Park and Pymatuning Lake and everything else. Those blue-collar people, this was their playground. They come up here, and their parents were hard workers. They were the motorheads in the neighborhood. You remember you grew up with them in school, and their kids hung with their dads, and they knew how to work on lawnmowers, and they'd put a motor on anything, to try and go. And we don't have that anymore because we lost all those factories. We're now kind of a medical, technical, and education crowd down in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, most people don't realize, is the second oldest population in the United States, only beat by West Palm in Florida as the oldest. So, the area is aging out. You don't have them young, crazy motorhead kids, I call them, that are raising. And the other thing is technology and the type of kids that are growing up today. They're staying at home. Bicycles aren't sold as much. Golf courses, if you notice, golf courses are all trending downward and closing, all as a result of what's going on with our basic population. And it's sad to see it happening.
I wonder too if there's a factor of the electronics out there. Every kid you see, he's working on his game, with his thumbs there.
It's exactly it, and they are overloaded with so much. We used to be excited playing with jacks and run with the ball and pick up baseball. You can't possibly compete now with what kids can do with Xboxes, with what's going on in movies and social media. What they're bombarded with at such a young age it's almost frightening to see what they have to go through. So just a little fun thing of putting on a bike, which used to be what we lived for when we were kids, isn't that big a deal. And then the other thing that happened is the four-stroke industry came in. Two-stroke bikes were much cheaper. When we first started, a guy could take $500 by himself, a little Yamaha, and hop it in the trunk of his car and come to a race to see if his kid even wanted to. Those bikes now are $3,500 to $5,000. The big bikes go as high as $10,000. And it's an expensive sport, and it's a four-stroke sport. A lot more expensive maintenance and so forth on the bikes. More technology is needed to maintain the bike, so the average guy and the average dad can't really put them back together if something goes wrong with them. More money because they're having to take them to the dealers, and that's also affected the sport a lot.
What about the four-wheelers? I know. I see them around and whatever. Are there any racing aspects of those?
Boy, at one time we had as many four-wheelers here as we had two-wheelers racing. There almost isn't a production racing four-wheeler even made now. Honda doesn't even make a 450EX anymore. So that has really affected the sport. And then you had a time period too where there were some injuries in it, but we get the insurance statistics come out every year, with the top 10 and everything. Believe it or not, motocross isn't in the top 10. Bicycles are number 1. High school football is either 2 or 3. So it's not even so much of that, but it's the fact that the cost has gotten so high. Four-wheelers especially. This is hard to believe, but a guy will spend $10,000 on a four-wheel, put another $10,000 in it to make it competitive. It's just gotten so out of hand. Almost like anything else. Look what's happening with NASCAR. Look what's happening with the local stock car racing. It got very expensive to participate in it. The pit prices went up, the crowd prices went up, and now look what's happening to the local stock car tracks. You just don't see the participation. When you see them taking out seats to NASCAR facilities so that they don't see the empty seats, that's when you know something's going wrong in our country.
What do you think for down the road for motocross racing, both locally and big picture wise?
Well, locally, as I said, we've seen a spurt. We've seen a bit of a comeback. We're hoping that's because of the extra effort we're putting into it, but it may just be, here's another thing that I always thought really spurred it. Way back when this sport really took its jump, a guy by the name of Jeremy McGrath was in it, and he got the first big, huge national contract with Pepsi. Pepsi was paying this guy millions of dollars to sponsor him. And the Pepsi, I read this article once, the Pepsi board one day is sitting there and they said, what is motocross? We never even heard of it. How come we don't see it? You know, we're spending all this money on this guy. What's going on? And Pepsi started getting behind a lot of that stuff, you know, forcing the networks to put more of it on and on. It got exposure. Then you had a couple motocross movies on any Sunday, and there was another one that was a great movie that come out, and that really spurred all kind of interest in the sport. Just like any big time movie comes along, you'll see it'll spur something, you know, maybe a hat design or clothing or a tradition. So that all came and went, and now that I think we have, you know, we just have a different situation. We're raising tech kids, and unfortunately we're losing our skilled workers, and that's the kind of person that usually does this sport.
So events are going on at the track here. Maybe touch on some of those.
Yeah, we have events. We try and run every other week. We used to run every weekend and filled the whole place up. You couldn't get in the place, you know. Like I said, 2003 was the peak. Maybe around 2012 was 2013 was the low point. It's been coming back since then. We've dropped to every other weekend for events. We added hare scrambles. This was something Mike's gotten older over the years. He's done a lot of motocross racing. He decided to do some woods riding. He started doing hare scrambles. And Mike was always a big part of the track when we started. And he came over and he says, hey, why don't you let me build you a hare scramble track? He says, I think it'll be popular. So we started experimenting with it a few years ago. We had, I think, 4 last year. We're having 3 this year. And they've been well attended, and it's been doing a great job. Mike's been putting together nice tracks. And so that's, you know, you try and fit every revenue stream you can into an operation. We did the truck thing for a while. We started that in 2012. That's why you see the pulling pad and the trails and so forth. And we may visit that again someday. We dropped out of it for a couple of years to meet DEP regulations. But now that that's all done and satisfied, we may visit that again yet.
Well, Art, good luck for down the road. We appreciate you taking the time
we
with us
appreciate
today.
you coming out and saying hello. Getting your feet a little dirty out here in the mud world.
Robertson, welcome to Crawford County Outdoors.
Nice to meet you. Yes,
enjoyed seeing you ride out there. Talk a little bit about your ride around the track.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to do a couple laps for you guys and just catch some air and I've been doing this for, I don't know, 35 years almost, so you're getting to see the old guy out there in action. There's definitely the younger generation that's coming up that's just amazing, but motocross is a great sport. It's a great family sport. I've been involved with it my whole life. I have 3 little boys and they all race and ride too, and my wife is on board, you know what I mean? Okay. So as long as we have a happy wifey, we have a happy lifey.
Well, okay, so let me ask you a couple things. When you're going through the air, I noticed you were actually moving controls around, putting the brake off and on. What goes on when you're in the air? To me, it's like when you're in the air, there's not a whole lot of control you have, but maybe I'm not right about that.
We have a ton of control in the air, believe it or not. I mean, if the wind pushes you around right to left, that's one thing. But as far as the altitude of the bike, you can control it with the back brake. You know, the inertia of the wheel spinning and you locking the wheel up will bring the front end down. And it's the opposite effect. If you chop the throttle and get the wheel spinning again real fast, it'll bring the front wheel up. Wow. So you can control your altitude. So if your landing's kind of steep and you need to get your front end down, you know, you can put it down there and land smooth as butter. So a lot of just years of experience, actually. I mean, you won't see a lot of riders with that technique yet, you know, at the beginning, but that really helps you as far as your bike control.
Do you want to try and land on the downslope? Do you want to try and land on the flat? How do you want to pick your landing? And I'm asking that. I was interviewing someone. I went to a talk recently about water skiing, and they were talking about going over a jump and hitting the water flat and how hard that was on the landing. So let me ask you about how do you want to land?
Yeah, it's the same with the dirt bike. If you land on the flat with both wheels at the same time, it's going to be a hard landing. And there's technique involved where, you know, you kind of get on the gas, you land back tire first, and you kind of slap the front end down, as we call it. You know what I mean? That's if you're landing on a flat and you're going long. You miss the landing altogether, it's going to be a hard hit. That's how you would do it. Now, when you're trying to land on the transition of the landing to gain as much speed as you can, and you want to land on the gas and squirt down the landing, as we call it, you know, that's how you want to control your bike, get your front end down, you know what I mean, land both wheels at the same time, full power. You know what I'm saying?
Now, when you're going over a rumbly area, a bumpy area, how do you handle that? It's, again, if your back wheel's bouncing off the ground, you're not going to be having any forward push there. How do you handle that?
You squeeze with your legs most of the time. You know, when it gets real choppy and rough and you're at a high rate of speed, you're squeezing so hard with your legs, not so much with your hands. If you were to squeeze with your arms the whole time like that, you would get what's called arm pump, and your arms blow up and you can't hold on anymore. You can't open your fingers. So a lot of squeezing with the bike. You can actually see some black marks where they rub on the bike, where you're squeezing so tight with your legs, you're almost relaxing your hands. And that's another time in the air. That's the only time we get a break, really. You know, when you're going through that rough, choppy stuff, you're holding on tight. When you're going up to a jump around a corner, you're holding on tight. But as soon as you leave the jump, that's when you loosen up your grip, you take a nice deep breath, and get ready to hammer down again.
So when you go around a corner, I saw sometimes you would hit the corner hard and kind of bounce into it. Other times kind of round it out. Talk about the differences.
Yeah, a lot of that had to do with the track conditions are pretty dry and stuff. They're not prepped. You know, a lot of times you want to try to come into a turn as fast as you can and rail the berm, as we call it. But this is a little bit ruddy. It's a little hard packed, so I had to kind of pick my line. And when it's hard packed and dry like that, believe it or not, it's slick. You know, you wouldn't think it's slick because it's dry, but it is. So you can push the front end and stuff. But some of the corners I would tiptoe around just because of the condition of the corner, and some had a nice berm, and I would just lay it in there and try to kick some dirt up for you guys. But the object of it is to go in as fast as you can and exit as fast as you can.
So when you're in a race and you're trying to get ahead of somebody, or you're trying to keep somebody else from getting ahead of you, how do you do that at the corner? How do you do that?
Like roost them, like throw dirt on them on purpose?
No,
sure, I do.
You sneak past them on the inside of the corner?
Yeah, I mean, say if you're out front, you're known. If somebody's behind you, you never want to look back, but you can hear them. You can feel their presence. You cover the inside line. You know, you wouldn't want to go out there and leave the door open, as it's called, and then have them come in and pass you. So you would want to cover the inside. But if somebody's on my tail, and if I know I can kick up a cloud of dirt and that's going to slow them down a little bit, that's what I do. These things, they like to throw dirt, and it's part of racing. That's the tear off factor, you know, the roost. I mean, it's a big part of what we do.
So now, we didn't see it just here on your practice here, but you want to get out early and get near the front so that you don't have 10 people in front of you throwing stuff in your face, right?
These things are like 60 horsepower. Like, they throw rocks almost like it's like equivalent to a shotgun blast, you know, and people don't realize, you know, that's coming off the back tire at 60 miles an hour, and you're running into it at 60 miles an hour. That's 100 mile an hour, 120 mile an hour impact of rocks, you know. So I've broken fingers, I've left with fat lips, I've had my goggle lenses completely blown out of my goggles during a race, and, you know, I don't know why, but for some reason you just stay right on them until you can either make a pass or the race is over. You know, you're willing to eat that roost, as we call it, for a race. But that's the difference in the woods guys and the moto guys. The woods guys are, you know, they're not so much down with that roost and getting pelted with rocks and stuff like that.
That was actually a question I was going to ask you, was about bumps and bruises, and how does that go in the sport?
Well, I'm 42, I'm pushing 43, and I've broken a lot of bones. For like 13 years, I was involved with freestyle motocross when it first started. And I actually, when the backflip came out, trying to learn the backflip, I broke my neck and my back in a foam pit. And then I healed from that and dislocated both of my knees trying to do flips. So the flip was kind of the demise to my freestyle career. And I got away from that and just came back to motocross, where it feels kind of safe, believe it or not. You know, I'm not getting upside down and trying to do these video game tricks, as I call them nowadays. But my sons, man, they're like, hey, Dad, we want to be freestylers. And I'm like, hey, sons, we're going to be racers. So that's why I started racing again, and I got them into racing again. And it's been a great sport for me. Like I said, going camping every weekend, that's what my wife calls it. I call it going racing every weekend. But loading up the bikes and seeing my sons, you know, push themselves and have the trials and tribulations that I've had with the sport is freaking awesome to me.
So any advice for someone who might be thinking about trying out this sport?
Yeah, man, just put on the protection, you know, wear the helmet, wear the chest protector, wear the neck brace, everything that they offer, you know what I mean? Put it on, because people don't realize how gnarly this sport is. And I try to tell them, when we crash at 35 or 40 mile an hour, don't sound like much, but jump out of your car at 40 mile an hour and see how you feel the next day. And so the more padding you can put on, the better off you're going to be. And then the rest of it is just have fun, because that's what it is all about. It's not about the injuries. It's not about anything else other than you're free. You're riding a dirt bike. If you're motocrossing, you're jumping through the air like Evel Knievel. I mean, how great is that, you know?
So it's all about fun, and it's a sport obviously you've done for a long time, and so it's fun for you.
Yeah, it's an absolute blast for me. I'm going to ride until I can't ride no more. I'm going to ride it until the wheels fall off, for sure. And I mean, I see it in the 60s and, you know, maybe 70s. I was at a vet national a couple weekends ago, and there was actually 70-year-old men racing their dirt bikes. And it was awesome to see. And that's my goal, you know, to have longevity in the sport. And at my age, I've learned when I should back it off a little bit and be safe that day, other than push and go over my head like I used to.
Gary, thanks for being with us.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. You have a nice day.
Joining us now, Mike Damertowski. Mike, the Hare Scramble. Tell us about the Hare Scramble.
Well, a Hare Scramble is different as what you watched with Gary doing the motocross. We're riding through the woods on various terrain of the woods and fields, a little bit of the track, and they call it a Hare Scramble. Years back, Hare and Hound was at the beginning because it was like a dog chasing a rabbit, you know. That's what the bikes looked like back in the old days, so that's how it got its name. And it's hell, but now they call them Hare Scrambles or cross-country race because it's not on one specific terrain. It's a whole big cross.
When you look at a piece of woods, how do you figure in your head what's going to be the right place for a turn or for a hill and for something to jump over?
That's a good question. Being a track builder puts a lot of different choices coming into a spot that you get to see where you can come in, where you're going out, and how you're going to get through there. And you have various levels of riders, so you can't make it too hard or advanced for the younger guys because they won't like it, and you can't make it too easy, or the faster guys that are more experienced will get bored with it. So you get a happy medium, and you try to make a couple spots, because with a Hare Scramble, with the arrows, you could go 15 feet either side of the arrow. You can actually set it up that somebody can go easy this way, or they can go hard this way, and you would think that even the advanced guys would want to just take the easy way because it's a little quicker. But being a track builder, you want to try to mess with them a little bit. So you'll make the entrance look like it's easier, but then it's like, uh-oh, maybe I should have gone the other way, and that's all part of the game.
So give us a little bit of your history. How'd you get involved, and how long you been involved, and what all do you work on here?
Well, I started riding when I was about 5, and my first race, I believe I was 10 years old, and it was in Springboro. It was a volunteer fireman race, and it was behind the fire hall. And since then, I had wanted the race, but I was when I turned 16 and I could drive, it was on. I was at the races every weekend as soon as I could drive to get to the track. And I moved up here in '87, and like Art said, he started the track in '89. I was actually working at Street Track and Trail at the time, being a mechanic, and I heard, oh, they're going to start a racetrack. I didn't know Art, never heard of them. I heard they were going to have a race, so I rushed right out after work, and sure enough, they were out here with dozers, putting banners up. I was like, I'm in, and I've been helping ever since. There was a period of time in the later mid-2000s that I kind of did some street biking for a while and kind of got away from the dirt. I was still here all the time hanging up, but I wasn't racing as much. But 2009, my son came, and I knew that I wanted him to ride a bike, so I got another bike, and he got bikes, and been riding ever since. And since I was doing motocross, I raced in the A class for 6 or 7 years, and that's the fastest class you get to race for money. And I used to be able to subsidize my income a little bit on the weekends, going to different tracks, which was always a nice thing. But once you start getting older and getting kind of beat up, never wanted to stop riding, but I'd start doing more trail riding like I used to when I was a kid. And just being on a motorcycle to ride is okay with me. So as long as I'm on my bike, everything's good. So Art's doing motocross, and I would come out here and help him out and bring my bikes, and I would just putt through the woods, and I was like, hey, let's do a woods race. And we had them before, and the CRA that Art had mentioned about the Competition Riders Association, they have motocross and Hare Scrambles. They do flat tracks, all kinds of aspects of racing. And each year each track has to sponsor a big weekend race where they have a Hare Scramble and a motocross. It's part of their deal. So twice in years past, I think the first one might have been in I don't remember the year, maybe 92 or 93, we put a Hare Scramble on, and I built that one, and we went pretty much through the same stuff. It was a little different. And then here we come to present. Last year we talked about it, and now we're here on our like 6th one, and they're getting bigger and bigger all the time.
So compare and contrast motocross racing, Hare Scramble, woods racing. Mm-hmm. What's it like? What's the difference in your machine needs to be? What's the difference in the way you drive and so on?
Motocross is more of a sprint race. You know, as soon as the gate drops, you're going as fast as you can till the end of the race, till they wave the flag. And usually the races are on a lap basis, that you do 5 laps or 6 laps and it's over. And on your last lap, second lap, you see the white flag, you know you only got one more. Sometimes you get a little bit more and you really get going on the last lap. A hare scramble is 2.5 hours long for the bikes, an hour and a half for the four-wheelers. The little guys do, I believe, 45 minutes, and then the other guys, the real little peewees, we let them go for 25 minutes. That's usually pretty good for them. And in the woods, you do probably 10 minutes a lap on an average between tracks and stuff like that. So sometimes most of the tracks you get anywhere from between 14 to 17 laps per race. So you'll go through here like you've seen me go just a little bit, and that was just maybe a 32nd of the whole course that we have here. That you really have to pace yourself. And a lot of these guys, like you said with the bikes, my bike is a trail bike. I got a 3-gallon tank. I'll do the whole race, I don't have to stop. The motocross guys, since they're only doing 5 laps, they don't need as big a gas, as much contained in there for weight saving. You know, you don't want to have 3 gallons if you're only going to use a quarter of a gallon. So they have very small tanks. Some of them are only like 1.8, maybe 1.4, something like that. They're very tiny. And they'll do like 4 or 5 laps. They got to stop and get gas. They're sitting there getting gas, they're pouring it in. The other guy's riding right by. So having a bike set up for these kind of courses definitely help you out. But then again, there's a guy that's super fast and he'll pull in and get gas and you still will never see him. So it just depends on what you like and what you want to ride.
So compare and contrast off-road racing and on-road riding.
Off-road and on-road, I like off-road riding so much better than on-road, just for the simple fact that I'm in control. I don't have somebody tell me I have to go this speed, I have to go that speed. You know, sometimes just like when you're in a car, if you're in no hurry and you're going to the store, you go slow. Some guy's going to come up behind you and say, hey, get off the road, you're going slow. And then the next minute you're driving down the road and you pass him because he's going slow, you're crazy, you know? When you're on a dirt bike, you never have that. You go what you want to do. If there's a spot you want to go, you gas it, you let off. You don't have to go a certain speed. You don't have to slow down. You don't have to put your turn signal on. You see something, you can jump it. You can skid. You can stop. You can do something. It's limitless. It's endless. It's boundaryless. And it's pretty much one of the only things that I can do that really clears my head, because when I get out in the woods, it's just me. And I don't think about anything about just, oh, I want to hit that. I want to do a jump, or I want to skid into something, and I just do exactly what I want to do.
So talk about some of the techniques. How do you go about doing a jump safely? How do you go about making a hard turn or a rounded turn or whatever?
That's a lot of things. It is such a broad thing to touch on, because each jump is so different in aspect, in trajectory, the takeoff, the smoothness coming off, how it drops off, how you land. You know, but most of the time when you go off a jump, most of the time you want to land with both wheels together, and then you get the uniform balance of the suspension. Or if you go off a jump and you're kind of high and you land more on the back tire, it'll hit and then the front end hits, and then you have 2 hits, and it's kind of a jarring thing where you would go up and you would land flat. You land on both wheels and you get the cushion of both suspensions, and then that's more so the way. But there are certain cases that when you're going off something, you can't do that, because there'll be a log or a rock, a puddle, a rut, that when you land, if you land with both wheels, your front end will go and hit something. So you'll have to make these decisions like this. And if you think, oh, I see that, I better pull up, I better lean back, you already hit it and you're done. After years and years of practice, you see that. And I hear it all the time. How do you do that? Well, to tell you the truth, I don't know. It just comes to me after doing it for years. And you can tell somebody what you do, but when they try to do what you're doing, they think about it. If you think about something when it comes up to you, most of the time it's too late. You have to do it, and you have to know how to do it. You see something, before I even hit, I was like, I'm going to do wheelie, and it's on. And I'm gassing, and I'm doing a wheelie, and I'm going over it. But for the most part, doing a big jump, you have to see how far you're going to go. You have to see where you're landing. You have to see what rocks. And on a motocross track, it's a flat wall dirt, and you're going up it. And those guys have a lot of credit, because what they do is pretty scary, and some of them jumps are really far. But when you got to go a jump that's half that far, but you're going through 2 trees that are only 8 foot apart, and there's a whole bunch of rocks down there that look like teeth in the ground just wanting to come up and get you. It's a little bit, it's just as hairy and just as adrenaline pumping as doing a motocross, but it's just totally different. It's totally different.
You've got some youngsters that are going to be on this track here today. So talk about that, safety for them, getting them sort of broken into it and so on.
Well, what we do on this particular track, instead of letting the little guys, because there's an 80 class, there's a 50 class, and then there's a real small 4-wheeler class, and then the big 4-wheelers and big bikes. We split the course up. We actually have like 3 different tracks within the track. And the little guys, the 80s, which are like the mid guys, they'll do probably 3/4 of the track, and we'll cut the furthest sections that go out into, and it's actually real hard for parents to go all the way out there and watch them and make sure everything's okay. We have flaggers out there that see, and we have radios, but it's kind of far, and since they're younger, we keep them right in here, and they're younger, so they actually, what we give them is quite enough for what they're doing and stuff. And then the little guys, we run the track backwards, and as you can see, the arrows that we have up going through the woods that you've seen that we were talked about earlier, we ride the little guys backwards, and we have a different color arrow. The big bikes all run an orange arrow, the little guys run a blue arrow, and where you place them on the trees when you're coming through, you put them pretty much at eye level, so when you're riding around, you don't have to look around too much. It shows you right where you're going. The little guys, you put them down a little lower, so when they're riding, they'll see the arrows. And I go backwards because the first couple races we had, the starts were the same, and we had a split without a banner, and some of the big guys followed the little guy's arrow, and they blamed it on me and said that I didn't have it marked right. And I was like, dude, orange, blue, you tell me. But that's what we do. We separate it up for the little guys and the big guys, and the big bikes and the big 4-wheelers do the whole thing. And we always run the 4-wheelers last because they really tear stuff up. They're
Impact the track.
They're hard on it, and it's not so much that you know, where they go and they slide, but they follow the track to a certain point. On a motorcycle, if you come to what they call a bottleneck, there's a couple guys stuck in a spot, and it's so tight that nobody can get around it. Somebody will actually go up over a log and go around them and start going, and then somebody will pull out and they'll go. When you're on a 4-wheeler and some guy jams in there and he's stuck good, he can't get out, those 4-wheelers, they will make their own trail no matter what the cost. And if you have banners, logs, you could have a bulldozer there. They'll go over it. And then when they see one guy do that, they'll do that, and then everybody follows, and then the whole section that I just made that took me a half an hour to make for everybody, don't even worry about it, we're going this way. And then they connect back on and go. But actually, that's part of the fun with those guys, because it's enjoyable to see somebody just go through something, and there'll be 3 or 4 guys sitting there that won't know what to do, and they're probably more not as experienced, and then you have one of these guys come around that knows what's going on, and he'll just blitz through something and make his own track, and these guys are like, let's go, and then they'll follow him, and it's very comical to come and watch that and see them do that.
So let me throw you the hard question of the day here. So make the sales pitch for this sport overall.
Okay. Well, for a Hare scramble, for me, I believe that it's inexpensive. It is an all-day ride. Everybody in the family, brother, sister, uncle, there's a class everybody can race. Everybody can come out while one class is racing. The family members can come out and watch them. They can watch the other class race, and they have cookouts, and they're in the pits having hamburgers and hot dogs while everybody's racing. And there's a couple races, and like I said, these races are half an hour, hour and a half, 2.5 hours, and we start at 9 o'clock, so you're here till like probably 3:34, and you don't have to ride the whole time, but yet still, as opposed to the motocross where you do a 5-minute race and then with 5 laps, and then you do another 5-minute race, 5 laps, then your day is done. You know, this, you're getting out here, you're going to get a workout. You're going to ride for 2.5 hours or an hour and a half on a quad, and I believe that if you go out riding with your friends just out in the woods, it's almost the same thing. Although this is a race, there are people that just come here and just to ride the trail, because there's not many open trails around the area anymore that you have to go somewhere. And while I'm building this course, people come out here all week and start checking it out. Some people don't like that because they're getting a little sneak peek at what's going to be coming, but there's no rules against it. You know, I'm making it, you can come look at it. But for me, I'm sold on it. I mean, I like being in the woods. It's legal. There's no cross traffic. There's no cars. There's no police with a radar gun telling you to slow down. You can do what you want. It's just, you know, and as soon as you come around, there's mom and dad cheering you on. Go! Can't beat it.
And for our regular Crawford County Outdoors fans, you might run into some deer.
Deer, oh. Just building this course, and it's neat because I'll shut the four-wheeler down. I have a big utility with rack and clippers and everything. I'll turn face to face with Bambi. I mean, right there. I've seen him before, but never that close with the spots on it. I didn't. It was amazing, really amazing to have it right there looking at you. And then it takes off and you can hear the branches break underneath it, and then right into that and gone, totally gone.
Well, this is pretty cool. Mike, thanks for demonstrating the obstacle there. So give us a little bit of overview here. So the races this year, and can the kids try it out somewhere down the road?
Yep, this was our last race this year, unfortunately. We had 3, and we'll be starting up again next year. And actually after the races, we have riding all the time. So anytime the guys want to come out here, they could just call Holeshot Raceway and make sure somebody's here, and they can come out and ride the stuff anytime they want.
Well, Mike, thanks for being with us today on Crawford County Outdoors. Also, thanks to Art and to Gary for helping us out with the show today.
Thank you for having us.
And I do want to give my best wishes to the family of Denny Mears, who's helped us out a number of times on Crawford County Outdoors. He passed away recently, so we feel bad about that. But, well, especially thanks to the folks at home for joining us today on Crawford County Outdoors, and we'll talk to you next time.